Welcome back to Fundyland Sees Red, where you're free to ditch the rules and show up in your pajamas half lit. Cheers. Hi, friend.
Hey.
So we're back for another webisode. I think we've hit 150 views on our first webcast. So that's super awesome. So tonight we are going to talk about the most silenced group in Fundyland.
I mean, you would think that we were talking about women, but because women are silenced hardcore in Fundyland,
Yes.
But we're not. Tonight, we're going to talk about one step down on the rung of importance in Fundyland, children.
Mm-hmm.
Children, they got no power. Like, at least the women have power over the children. The children, it's like Lord of the Flies. Like, some children have power over other children, but they're on the low end of the totem pole in Fundyland, for sure.
No, it's true. So I wasn't raised Fundy per se, but kind of the ideas in fundamentalism, I was definitely raised by, like, I was raised in the church, and it was evangelical. I saw a ton of hypocrisy, but it was kind of the whole, like, kids are they're to be seen, not to be heard. Do as I say, not as I do. There weren't explanations for anything. It was just more obey because I said so. Like, some of the rules that were held high were the whole, like, no drinking, no dancing, no Halloween. But then you see homes filled with pornography abuse, alcoholism, and then you have, like, the knockdown, drag out fights with, like, church members, like at the church meetings or whatever. So anyway,
basically, like,
it's the same stuff.
It's the same kind of, like, hierarchy of bullying. And
right.
Things get done. It's like survival of the fittest. Like,
yes.
Things get done only by bullying, like, the people on top bullying the people on the bottom into submission, and it rolls downhill. So it's like,
exactly. Yeah.
And if you're a kid, you have no choice but to be there. So you kind of, like, that's where it all stops with you. So
yes.
You just have to kind of shut up and put up with it. But I, on the other hand, was raised in extreme Fundyland, where these things were unapologetically voiced. So it's like, yeah, women, were silenced. Women weren't allowed to work outside of the home even. So it was like this forced dependency and this forced community. So your only community then is the church.
Right.
You're not going to be influenced by any outside influences. And so
who is like in your window? Is that Brock? I just noticed there's somebody standing in your window freaking out. I was like, what?
Marci, get out. You are about to be robbed. There's a man peeking in your window.
I'm like legit freaking out right now.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
I'm gonna run away.
I was like, okay, what room can I go in where no one will disturb me?
I was like, wait, is that a reflection? That's a person. Why is it scary?
The Fundies have finally found you.
In your gated community.
Never mind that I moved to a gated community and nobody knows my address.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Brock. Welcome.
Right.
Welcome to Fundyland Sees Red from Marci's son.
Right.
That's his rebellion.
I should probably get him in here to, like, talk about it, because he was raised in Fundyland too. But he was not raised in extreme Fundyland like I was.
Yes.
Where, women got slapped around, nobody said anything. You know, like John Piper says, she might have to get slapped around for a night, you know, before the church intervenes. But even then, our church did not intervene. She probably deserved it. And so if wives could get slapped around, then you know the kids got the, you know what, beat out of them. Every kid I knew got spanked. I got spanked. We all got spanked and spanked and spanked and spanked. Like, I honestly think that child abuse is rampant in Fundyland. Like the Bible verse, and I hate to admit it, but I've quoted this Bible verse too. And we all, like as Fundies, we almost joke about it. There's a verse in Proverbs that says, if you beat them, they will not die. There's some indication of like, if you beat your children, their soul will be saved. And so people use that as justification then to
beat their children.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's the foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline will drive it far from him.
You know, my kids, I'm not even kidding, like their Christian school had a song about that.
Oh my gosh.
And they sang like, foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. Not, wait for it, but the rod of
no!
Rod of
you all sing along.
I'm not
kidding. You're in me.
I'm not kidding. And they all sang and they all clapped. It's like, oh yeah, we got the hell beat out of us. Let's go.
Oh my gosh. Okay, it's funny, but it's not funny.
It's funny, God. And then it's like, wait, at some point, does anyone stop and think there's something wrong here?
Wow.
Okay, so we laugh at this, but both you and I started down this road. We drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
We had kids. We had babies. We were like, okay, I want to be the best parent ever.
Yeah.
This is what the Fundies are telling me I need to do to be the best mom ever. Do you want to talk about your experience first?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, when you talk about fundamentalism, there's a system in place, and there's patriarchy, and it's men at the top, and they're oppressing women, and then there's, I've just learned a new word, hierarchy, and that's where the oppressed people turn, and they oppress each other. And that's women oppressing women. And we've talked about this, I'm pretty sure, here, in that, you know, women will speak on behalf of the men to control one another. But also women oppressing children in the system, and they're the most vulnerable. And what keeps this system going is indoctrination. And so you have the women oppressing the children and teaching them from birth that if they break from form, they're no longer under God's umbrella of protection. And so
that term. Ew.
I know, right? But and then it's cyclical. Like I've had little boys, their egos are boosted. I mean, I've had little boys try to cut me down and confront me. And like, I literally had like this little 6-year-old boy in my house at one point telling me that I don't love my children because I feed them applesauce that contains sugar. And also because I'm driving them to idolatry, because I had like Oriental trading catalogs in my house because I was eating BBS. So I had to like order a bunch of little craps for the games. Anyway, I mean, this little 6-year-old boy was like, you don't love your children. You're tempting them with idolatry with all of these catalogs. And I'm like, what? You know, like, little person, who do you think you are? But then the girls are taught to be quiet, and they're trained to clean house, and taught that the chief end of them is to serve a man someday in marriage. And so this oppressive system through indoctrination, like that's how it keeps going. And so, yeah, you have parents that are, we talk a lot about how like we became robots in the system, but you want to talk about the real robots of fundamentalism, you want to look at the children.
Yeah.
Because they're not allowed to feel. They're spanked for crying. Yep. Even if it's crying because, hey, I fell and I hurt myself.
Yep.
You're crying too loud. You need to learn to cry quietly. They're spanked for that. They're spanked because they're in a situation that's frustrating to them. So if they get frustrated, they get spanked.
Yep. They got spanked. I taught 4-year-olds for years at my church, and kids got spanked for crying when their moms dropped them off.
Yes.
And
yes.
like, and multiple times.
Yes.
Like they're crying. Okay. You're crying when your mom drops you off. Oh, go get a spanking. She comes back. Okay. You better not cry this time. Oh, you started crying again? Going back. Like,
yeah. Like I have separation anxiety and I'm getting spanked for it.
Right. I'm afraid. Like I found myself like, just like, you should be really glad your mom's leaving you here.
She won't stop spanking you.
I know. Like,
I'm gonna spank you.
Beating the crap out of you. Come here and play some games with me. Like, so many times I would just be like, if you would just leave them and go to church, like they will stop crying.
Stop.
5 seconds. Like I'm pretty good with kids. Like as soon as you leave, I will engage them. But the fact that you're standing there and you're just like refusing to let them cry. And I mean, I have this problem. Like I have a really hard time crying because I was so shamed for it as a child.
Right.
And slapped across the face for crying. Like, if you don't stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about. That instead of crying, like emotions still have to come out. So it either comes out in anger or I chew my cuticles to a pulp.
Yeah.
It comes out in tears or it comes out in blood. Like it comes out. And the fact that people cut themselves, like that's a phenomenon that comes from emotions needing to come out, but they're not allowed. So it's like, we're laughing about it because it's insane.
Right.
That you would spank your child because they're sad that you're leaving them.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, and kids got spanked for not eating, for moving. I mean, and this is something that was said in my own home because this is how we were trained to rear our children. You obey the first time, every time with a happy heart.
Yeah.
And that's the law. And if you don't obey me immediately with a smile on your face, that's an infraction. Yep. And you're disciplined for that in a physical way. And while I do, like, at least for me, like there was like an entire process that was involved in that it was controlled. And I think this was championed, that it's a controlled discipline, because then you get away with it. It's not discipline done out of anger per se. So what we were taught is, your child does whatever XYZ, disobeys you. You send them to their room so that you're not angry and frazzled when you're dealing with the situation. So you calm down, and then you go into their room and you ask them what they did wrong and you read them. Also, there was a book, I think I've talked about it on this show before, but Training for Righteousness. As if you can train for righteousness. It's so great. So antithetical to the gospel. But basically, this book is alphabetized by infraction. And you can look up whatever they did if they lied to you. So you look up lying. And there's all these scriptures about lying. So you pick whatever verses you want to give your child about lying and why that's wrong. And then you let them know they're getting X amount of swats. So it's not just like beating until you feel better. But this number is based upon nothing.
Right.
Like, I just get to decide.
Like Debbie Pearl pulled it out of her ass.
Yes, she did. And so I'm going to give you this amount of spankings. And then once I administer those, then the child has to ask the parent for forgiveness and quote, what is it, like Colossians 3:20, children obey your parents as unto the Lord. Is that Colossians 3:20?
I think it's in Colossians, but I think it's also in Ephesians.
Maybe. I should know this. It's been a while for me. But anyway, they have to
say. Are you that you don't know exactly where that verse is?
My daughter has no memory of this, by the way. That's a fun story.
Yeah, you're lucky about that.
I am. Marci came over and I was digging. Who was digging through the kitchen drawers? Is it my husband or myself?
Alice was desperately searching for something to open our wine bottles with.
Oh,
I think so.
Yeah. So he found this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we still have that. We need to throw that away.
And our second webcast was born.
It was. Marci gave herself a good swatting with this on her hand to check it out. This was given to me by a mentor. Because in fundamentalism, and where I was, everyone had actually a conveyor belt piece that they would spank their children with. But see, you had to go through training classes in order to obtain that. Because what we want to do is make sure we use something that's not abrasive as to leave bruising or marks on our children. Because in the state of Texas, you can beat a child into, I did not beat my child, into their life. And it's still legal. So long as it doesn't leave a mark. And that's super sick and needs to be challenged. And that was like 10 years ago. So it could be totally different now. I don't know because I don't spank my children now. But anyway, so this is what was given to me as a tool to discipline my children. So it was just kind of interesting that I still had it. And we decided to make a webcast out of that.
I mean, and even in my latest fundamentalist church that I've been a part of for 20 years, there was joking about how to spank without leaving a mark. There was discussion of how to spank in public so that child services wouldn't come and take your child away. You wouldn't be reported. Those BS straps were sold, like people bought and sold them. Mm-hmm. You had to buy them from
mine's black market.
Yeah, this like godly person who sells these leather straps, because you don't want to spank with your hand because then your child will associate your hand with punishment and blah blah blah. And like I never bought into that, because like while I did spank my children, and I will talk about that, and I had to have a come to Jesus moment with my kids because I raised them Fundy for the first 10 years of their life, of Brock's life. Paige got lucky. She only had 7 years. I spanked with my hand because I wanted to be able to feel what I was administering, because I was spanked as a child with a leather belt on my bare butt.
Mm-hmm, me too. Yep.
That feels a lot like a whipping, and and I didn't want to do that to my kids. But just the fact that conversations in Fundy circles center around hiding how we discipline our kids, and joking about beating them. So beating them, but they will not die, from Proverbs. And all of this stuff, it funnels into this desensitization. Oh my God, I've had too much wine. I can't say that.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Word.
Desensitizing them.
Thank you.
Yes.
From the seriousness of what these children have no voice. They just have to receive whatever parenting they're given. And so it's all about control. It's all about breaking their will.
Mhm.
and turning them into robots. You're
Right.
you're turning them into little people who have no opinions, no individuality, no say over their body. So you're setting them up to be abused as adults. You're setting them up to be codependent on a spouse, an abusive spouse.
Right. And with that, okay, so the second half of disciplining your child after they ask you for forgiveness for their infraction, you've spanked them, they're asking you for forgiveness, you hug them. So it's this like, oh, well, yes, I'm spanking them, but then I'm hugging them and showing them how much I love them. And it's like
confusing.
It's very confusing. You're using violence as a solution, and then but I love you. And we have to say, because I love you, I'm doing this violent thing to you physically.
Right.
That is not a way to set people up for abuse. I don't know what else is. I mean, that's when you hear women that are in abusive relationships, but he loves me, but he loves me, but he loves me. It's because those things are confused.
Yeah.
And then it's spiritual abuse, because then they have to now seek God's forgiveness for their infraction, because obey your parents as unto the Lord. Like, you've sinned against your parents, so now like you're accountable to God because and it could be anything that's not even necessarily sinful. I ran through the house. I cried too loud because I got hurt. I didn't eat my peas. I crawled off the blanket. Like, that's a magic trick in fundamentalism. Like, look, I can leave my baby on this blanket and it won't crawl off because I've taught it not to by spanking it. Like, what?
Well, and a lot of it is done. To for the benefit of other fundies who are watching you. And
yes.
I'm going to out myself right now, because I had a friend who wanted to have our children's pictures taken together. She was a very close friend. We had our babies within like days of each other. And so she wanted to like take them to a professional photographer and have their picture taken together, because she was just sure they were going to get married someday. So they're 4 years old. And we take them to like Olin Mills or some weird place like that and put them up on this platform, and Brock is scared to death. Like, and the photographer is this creepy guy. And Brock is like bawling. He doesn't want to be on this platform. He's scared. It's dark. It's flashing. He's kind of a kid who likes to know what's expected and structure. And this is all new, and it's scary to him. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But my friend is there watching. And so I'm like, no, you're going to get on that platform and you're going to smile. And he cries. So I take him to the bathroom and I spank him multiple times. I brought him back multiple times, put him back on that platform. He cried again. I took him back and spanked him. And now I have this memory like memorialized in a portrait of my little 4-year-old precious boy who's smiling with a tear-stained face, tear-stained, like blotchy little face, like holding a little ladder or something, looking scared to death, but smiling. What kind of an able parent does that? Me.
And one that thinks her favor from God is dependent on that little boy holding the ladder and smiling.
Right. And posing with my friend's daughter to please my friend.
Yeah.
And that's what happens in Fundyland, is that we please other people by hurting our kids.
Yeah, we do. Absolutely.
So like there was a time when I couldn't even think about that story without like bawling my head off. I'm telling it now because I want to help other people. Like, don't be an asshole like I was.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
put your kid before your friends.
Right. Yeah. And the thing of it is, I mean, parenting is freaking hard. I made the comment to Dallas, my husband, this week. Our son is about to be 6, and it's hard. He's extroverted. He's passionate like mommy, but you can't out argue with this kid. He's his dad in that regard. And he out argues me a million times over every single day. I mean, it's exhausting and infuriating and difficult. But the worst thing I could do is try to break his will. And it's actually this, my daughter she'll be 13. And this is the funny part of when Marci was here, because Marci's like, do you remember your mom being strict? And she was just like, what? She had like, what are you talking about? Like, she had and I was like, no, you can be honest. Like, it's fine. And she's like, no, I don't. So I'm like, oh, thank you, Jesus. But
so
she
lucky. My kids have a million stories of when I was
no. Oh, I'm thankful. I think when Naomi was probably about 4 is when 3 or 4 is when I crashed, and I was like, I can't anymore. But she was the quiet, compliant, introverted, just want to please mommy, like play by herself, perfect child. And I thought, really good parents. I've got it together. Like, I'm raising this godly little girl. Like, I have made it. Everyone was coming to me for parenting advice. I'm like, well, you're just not spanking them hard enough, because if you were, you wouldn't have this problem.
That first one's a trick.
And then I had Ezra. And he was like born with his middle fingers in the air. And it has been one roller coaster ride over another, and he's precious and I adore him, but he bucks the system, and he always has. And it came to that point with him, that whole like, oh wait, the first time, every time with the right attitude. I mean, I was literally spanking this child all day, and it was like,
it's all you get done. It's all you get done.
And it was to the point where I had to stop, because I was like, if I spank him one more time, I'm abusing my child. Like, he is so strong-willed. He's so like determined. And it's this whole idea, it's this fear of having a child-centered home.
Yes.
So we're going to beat them into submission, because this is going to help them in the future to submit to authority. And it's like, no, all you're doing is breaking their will. You know what? My son is difficult. His counter arguments are like nothing I've ever seen. I mean, his vocabulary is like, I don't know what to say to you right now. I don't have a rebuttal at this point. Just stop. But that says something about who my son is going to become. He's independent. He's very logical. He's very like, no, like, it has to be done this way.
Yeah.
He's probably going to be a CEO of a company someday. And he's very smart, and that little brain is always going. And so, yeah, he gets frustrated when he doesn't understand why he can't go get dad's drill out of the garage. All I need to do, Mom, is drill this thing into this thing, and then I have the thing that I need. And I'm like, you can't use your dad's drill. Why not? It's right there, I
remember that you didn't tape on the paper plate wheels right when I was there.
There was a box. Marci was at my house, and there's this box, and he's trying to build this car for his stuffed animal.
And we're drinking wine, and we're like, just put the plates on however you want. Get some double stick tape. Who cares?
And he is so so frustrated because he's trying to build this car with this box and these paper plates, and he's falling apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had to assist taping them, but I wasn't doing it correctly to his satisfaction. Eventually, I made it work, but he's just... But that's going to be what's frustrating about him now, is going to be the thing that just like freaking propels him in life.
And
you
the thing
know,
about, like the thing about Ezra is that he's not malicious.
No,
he's positive. He's like, his mind is going a mile a minute, and you don't want to crush that.
Right.
He's not malicious. He's just determined, you know, like
so determined.
So like, if you just, and I mean, easy for me to say because I like assumed grandma mode when I was there, and I was
you were
like,
great.
He
adores
amazed,
you.
Like I was amazed at Sarah's patience with him. Like, but I'm able to be that way because it's like, that's not my day to day anymore. I just laid on the floor with him and watched, like, let him talk me through all of the things that were going through his mind.
Yeah.
And I was like, you would never want to crush this, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, and thank God that you came out of Fundyland before you would crush that. You know, like I crushed my compliant child. Like,
right. Yeah.
I crushed my compliant child. Like, you know, then all hell broke loose when I got the second one.
That second one, man, I don't know.
Yeah. Like, I'm telling you, the first one's a trick because I had the same thing. Like, you losers, like, if you would just parent like me, you would have perfect children like I do. And then the second one, but it's like to crush that little child, hit their will, the very thing that makes them tick, that makes them interested, that makes them explore, that makes them a unique individual. You know, we were always taught you need to discern between childish behavior and maliciousness. And it was like, you know what? With Ezra, there was no maliciousness. It's just like full energy. I mean, give me 2 cups of coffee and I need a spanking, you know? So
yes, exactly.
But
so,
I mean, that's the gift that Gary Ezzo and Growing Kids God's Way gave to Fundyland, is how to control every movement of your child, and that fear of the child-centered home. Your children are demonized. Basically,
they are
demonized your children to say they're selfish little bastards who, you know, will take over your home if you let them. And then it sets parents against children. They'll destroy your marriage. You know, I mean, and here's the thing. Gary Ezzo's children don't speak to him now. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
They're estranged. But
wow. Do you want to say who Gary Ezzo is? Did you do that already?
Gary Ezzo is the author of the Growing Kids God's Way BS that took over and actually was kicked out of Grace Community Church for being legalistic after an entire generation of kids went off the rails when they turned 18. So I happened to be there at that church. That's John MacArthur's church, by the way. I happened to be there at that church at the height of Growing Kids God's Way mania. And I mean, people were spanking their kids for not saying hello. People were like making me stand there, and their kids would come back 20 times till they said, hello, Miss Marci. I mean, it was like, your kid's not allowed to be shy. Your kid's not allowed. Your kid has to be a robot.
Yep.
With perfect etiquette and no false moves. No childish behavior in a 4-year-old is allowed. Even though, hello, they're a child.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was there at the height of that. And then, I don't know, several years later, MacArthur kicked Ezzo out and said, oh, your program is legalistic. Oh, after an entire generation of people raised their kids that way,
Well, and even though they were kicked out there, I was at a daughter church of Grace Community Church, and I was handed as though from the whole like Nazi regime of sleep training your child. What was that? It was
Baby wise. Baby wise.
wise. Baby
Yep.
wise.
Same.
Yes, it starts with that. It's
Yeah,
the
me
same, and
too.
it's the same thing. It's you let your babies cry it out. You only feed them. You don't feed them on demand. You feed them on the schedule when it's time to feed them. They sleep when you say it's time for them to sleep. This is training them from the beginning that this is not a child-centered home. And
Right.
so I think we've talked about this a little bit, that it goes just against everything as your instincts as a mother.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was taught that, and then I was given Growing Kids God's Way by the mentor with the leather strap, and she was like, "Don't tell anybody I gave this to you. You're mature enough to handle it." But I read it, and I was like, even then, even in fundamentalism, and I was like, this seems awfully far.
Yeah.
Like they're taking this
toward
really
the end, literally, and I think I've said this too before, like toward the end of Growing Kids God's Way, like we did the whole video series at our church. I mean, we did the whole thing, and you know what?
Wow.
I hate to say it, but it was my idea.
Yeah.
And it was like, I told people, this is really legalistic, but you can get some really great tips from it.
Yes, that's what was said to me too.
Yeah. Like I was like, this is and it was appealing to me to have a guarantee, like if you parent your kids this way, they will turn out this way.
Right.
And it was appealing to me to have other people discipline their kids this way because their kids annoyed me. You know, you desperately need this program. But toward the end of Growing Kids God's Way, like Gary Ezzo is off talking about all the things that annoy him.
Yes.
And it's like the things that don't even have to do with child rearing. It's just he's OCD and he needs people, the whole world to like.
He doesn't like children.
Right. He needs the whole world to accommodate his OCD. So it's like, but I mean, I have a lot of connections at that church, and I have heard from several people that the Ezzos are estranged from their children, their adult children.
I don't doubt it.
And yet they still are out there propagating this terrible program.
Yeah.
It's it's abusive.
No, it is. It is. I mean, when you talk about you discipline your children from speaking when they have pain, like experiencing pain and reacting to physical pain to their body.
Right.
That is abuse.
Right. Right.
Like to the point where I have a major thing going on in my body and I can't cry out in front of a doctor who's testing my body to see where the pain is, to figure out like this has happened. I know of instances where this has happened, where children have been so disciplined that they can't cry out in pain. Yeah. When it's necessary to know where is the pain. I mean, we are stopping them from being people.
Right. And from listening to their bodies and from communicating.
Yes.
General human things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's some people from my hometown who are right now in jail for abusing their adopted kids. And they used food to like control those adopted kids to the point where those kids became like emaciated. They had, one of their kids had a broken leg or something.
I think you sent me this article. This has been a couple years. Yeah, I've read about this.
It's been like a year, I think, or whatever. And the worst thing about it, and this is the hardest pill for me to swallow, the worst thing about it is that they were on like a speaking circuit around various churches talking about adoption.
No.
And they were abusing their adopted children. So,
and the evidence was that they had several broken bones that had healed over that didn't have medical attention.
That didn't heal right.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Yeah. So this was a long-term abuse.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a heavy subject, and we try to be funny on this show. So, but also, like, fundies, please wake up. Please wake up and stop abusing your kids. Like, wherever you land on spanking, whatever. But Fundyland has become a cover for abuse.
Yeah, it does.
And you know what? It takes a long time for someone to admit, that they were abused as a child, because they don't want to view their parents that way. And it also just takes a long time to admit as a parent that you were abusive. So it's like, but if you will admit that, your kids will forgive you. Yeah. Like, Brock was 12 and Paige was, I guess, what's 12 minus 3?
9.
Fine. I got it. Okay. So Brock was 12 and Paige was 9. And I was like teaching a parenting class at church. This is when I realized, oh my gosh, I like abused my kids in a sinful way. In a controlling, you are a reflection of me kind of way. Mm-hmm. And repented, like, I still repent to them every now and then. They make fun of me, like, oh, you're a fundy. But
yeah.
I did. I repented with tears and hugging and please forgive me. And the forgiveness is there.
Oh, yeah.
And you can be free of that. Like just lay it down.
Right.
And your kids are people, and they need respect even when they're little children. That's what happens in Fundyland is there's this idea that women don't need respect. There's this idea that kids don't need respect, that obedience trumps respecting them.
Everything.
Yeah. And it's not true. And
no, I mean, they should be first of all, you need to allow your children to be human.
Yes.
Like, they are human and they're experiencing human emotion and human things. And it's not to say that you can't do some form of redirection and have control. You obviously, we don't want to have kids that are just screaming in our faces and F you, There are moments like when my son, he gets really frustrated when something doesn't go his way. And I remove him from the situation and I have him sit in his room. It's like, here's the appropriate place. I understand you're frustrated. If you want to flip out, here's the appropriate place to do that. You're away from everyone else. Yeah. You're safe. You can't hurt yourself. Like, okay. And when you're done, you can come out. Same thing when he's frustrated and screaming with me because he can't get what it is that he wants right at the moment, and he always comes back and he's broken. And here's the thing, because in fundamentalism, it's you spank them until they're broken.
Yeah.
What's amazing is how I can just remove my son from the situation, give him a minute to collect himself. He crumbles and comes back. Mom, I'm so sorry that I was yelling. I'm so sorry that I blah, blah, blah. And then now we're on grounds. Oops, I almost knocked over my Tito's. We're on grounds that now we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
And hey, buddy, how can I help? How can I, whatever, here's the thing.
Right.
We just believe that we can beat it out of them. And it's
right. And you can't necessarily reason with a 2-year-old. Right. I understand there are consequences that save their life. And I wrote an article recently about Brock when he was 2 years old, 3 years old, sticking, a metal shaft into an electrical outlet, and, a swat on the hand or some sort of corporal punishment was appropriate because that would save his life. Like, this is important.
Right.
You understand this is never, never okay. And you can't reason with a toddler,
Right. Mm-hmm.
So all of that, like, there's common sense. And that's what we always try to bring up in our podcast and our webcast is that Fundyland takes away your common sense.
It gives you a formula in place of your common sense.
Yes. And so it's like, if you find yourself joking about how to hide bruises on your kid's butt from their teacher, there's a problem. That's a problem.
That's a problem.
So,
yeah.
That I think launches us, unless you have anything to add, that launches us into our Hall of Shame segment.
Yeah, man, let's just do it. I mean, I think my Hall of Shame is Debbie Pearl, and I'm hoping that we can have a very soon show on Debbie Pearl. I don't know how familiar you are with Debbie Pearl, Marci, but
I never read her.
A.
No.
But
okay, she was recommended to me, and I mean, since you and I have been friends, I know her crap, and
yeah, no, she crazy. So they are super terrifying. They're very extreme fundamentalist. Her view of the Trinity, first of all, is such a disaster. It makes God an abuser. It makes the Holy Spirit out of control. I mean, so basically she takes the Godhead and applies it and says there are 3 types of men in the world, and it's awful. But then there's also the child rearing side, where that's where children are spanked because they don't eat. So there's the blanket trick that I mentioned earlier, but basically like, and she says, okay, so you're training these children so that they don't, basically that, you know, one day if your child on the street and you say stop, they'll immediately stop and come to you so they don't get hit by the car. The idea is that you're saving your children's lives, but you start from infancy. And so they're crawling and you teach them to stay on this blanket, and basically you keep spanking them. I did not do this, but you keep spanking them till they learn not to move off of the blanket. And like
it's like dog training.
Dude, it's like dog training. And I have been with fundies where they're like, watch this, my baby doesn't move off of the blanket. And they set it down. And I'm like, that's really weird. Like, not okay. Yeah. And I mean, Debbie Pearl, like I said, I don't want to get too much into it because I want to have a show on the pearls, but it's I mean, people have very much been arrested. Babies have died, severe abuse by following the pearls. And that's, again, you spank babies for crying, things like that, associated with the pearls. So it's some pretty serious business. So yeah, I definitely would say that's a Hall of Shame, and definitely do not recommend anything. I mean, her theology is shit. I don't care. I'm going to say that because it is shit. Yeah. And she's an advocate for abuse. And yeah. I mean, I read recently her husband's accounting, Tim Fall, and I'm hoping we get him on. But he posted on Twitter, I don't know if it was on his blog or if he just posted, but it was an accounting of her husband talking about their wedding night. And you want to talk about patriarchal abuse and how women are nothing but objects. Oh my gosh, the accounting of their honeymoon. It will infuriate you and my husband was sick after reading it. He was just like, you gotta be kidding me.
I mean, first of all, why did he write an accounting of their honeymoon night?
Well, the whole thing
nobody wants to read that, bro.
That's when I found out that men and women are different, because I'm sleeping and she's cooking for me, and then we're staying up all night, so she has to have sex with me, and then she's getting 2 hours of sleep, and then I'm making her like walk across the beach and she's like stepping on shells with the flashlight because she doesn't have shoes, and I'm like dragging her. Like, she finally, at the end of the article, it talks about how she collapses and passes out in the shower. That's how exhausted she is. Like, probably got a concussion in the damn shower. And then she finally defends herself. And he doesn't say, hey, I'm an asshole. Hey, I said asshole. Wait, you did last time.
I did last time, tons of times.
Hey, I'm an asshole and realize I can't abuse my wife. No, he says, oh, I just realized that men and women are different and women aren't as strong as men. And it's like, dude, you were sleeping the whole time. She's slaving away, not getting any sleep, having sex with you on demand. Like, you're abusing her to the point she passes out, and that's your freaking conclusion?
Oh my God.
And these people are giving marriage and child rearing advice. Okay. Like,
it's like, oh, you're a psychopath. Lead us. Teach us your ways, psychopath. I mean, it's pretty crazy how many psychopaths rise to leadership.
And fundamentalism.
Isn't it? Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
That's why we have a Hall of Shame segment and so many people to populate it, because
we never run out of material.
Because freaking people follow these people. It's uncanny. It's incredible. So it seems appropriate that my Hall of Shame segment the award goes to Gary Ezzo and his wife. Oh, you know what? I don't even know what her name is. Do you?
No. I only know Gary. The Ezzos.
Yeah. The Ezzos. Gary Ezzo. Huh.
I have their books, but they're in my Hall of Shame box.
Well, she's on the video, but I can picture her big white lacy collar and her navy blue dress.
She's dressed like a pilgrim.
Yeah. Nope, don't know it. Okay, so Gary Ezzo.
Anyway.
He stands in that place by himself then, since I don't know.
Well, he's the leadership of the home, so he takes full responsibility anyway. If I remember the rules correctly.
She's just a robot. She's a nameless, faceless object. So
with ruffles.
Who sits there and says, yes, dear, and aren't you amazing? So I'm going to put Gary Ezzo, and I really honestly think, like, the main thing that sticks out to me from growing kids God's way is that it's like shyness is not an excuse. Like, shyness is counted as the sin of rudeness.
Yes,
and
it is.
And they unapologetically say that. My daughter was like too shy to talk to strangers, and I tried that for a while, like spanking her for not saying hello. And then I was just like, wait a second, I don't want to spank her and then bring her back here and make her say hello to you. I don't even want to say hello to you, half the people, like, I mean, I still remained in Fundyland on many levels, but I rejected that early on, because that's all you would do is beat the crap out of your child until they learn to say hello to every stranger that, common sense people are saying, hey, teach your kids to be wary of strangers, not hug and kiss all of the strangers. So my friend,
and it's definitely like doing that, like that was praised from the pulpit of people that, the pastor up there all talking about how this particular family would take their child and spank them and make them talk to me. And I just thought that was so, teaching children respect. And like, it's not just the Ezzos, like that garbage is perpetuated from pulpits.
Yeah. I mean, my friend Vedra Thatcher, she posted a illustration of how fundies, it's not specifically to fundies, this is how people do this to their kids, but it's how people train their kids to be abused by people, because it's like, hug Aunt Linda, hug Aunt Uncle this, hug, you have to use your body to please other people.
Yep.
And that just trains them that they have no say over their own being.
Yeah.
They have to give themselves to other people, which just basically trains them to be abused and to have no boundaries and to have no say.
No, their no is taken away.
Yeah. So, so we're going to wrap this up. just this segment on children and the most silenced group in Fundyland. They have no say. Fundyland kids are growing up and they're saying, they're telling their stories. They're like, the reason I didn't tell this story when I was a kid is because nobody would have believed me. I was being abused. Kids who were abused in Fundyland, and there are many, 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 because Fundyland is a magnet for abusers because they have an endless supply of victims.
Yep.
Kids are growing up, they're like, yeah, I was abused in Fundyland, but I couldn't tell anybody because nobody would have believed me. Why? Because kids are not credible witnesses.
Yep.
And so even though they're saying explicit things that kids shouldn't know about, no, you're making that up. So kids are not believed, they're not respected. We're just trying to raise awareness. Sarah and I wrote an article a while back about, it's called The Stones Will Cry Out. You can read it on either one of our blogs, just about what we've witnessed personally and walked through victims of this in our own lives. And if you have been abused, please feel free to reach out to us on our Twitter account. You can DM us. We would love to highlight your story. We just had a listener reach out to us recently who was just kind of, it's just kind of the control continues. And this is why universities like Bob Jones University thrive, because parents don't want to stop parenting when their kids go to college. So they send them to universities that will parent them through college and into adulthood. And that way kids are trained to be submissive throughout their whole lives. And I've seen lots of fundies who are submissive to their parents still, and they're in their 40s.
Right.
Their parents control their marriages, their families, their everything. And we had one listener reach out to us and say that she experienced this in her college group, where like she was told who she could and couldn't date. Like she was being trained to be a leader. But then a family member died and she fell into depression. Her grades started slipping. And this boy who was interested in dating her was like pulled aside and told not to date her. Like her small group.
Because of her grades.
Slipping. Yeah. Her small group was kind of used as a invitation for her to be transparent, so that then they can control her with the information that she was giving them. She was looking for help, and they used it to control her instead, and guilt her, shame her out of her depression. Like when does shame ever work to get people out of depression? Like,
never
work.
Yeah. I mean, they were trying to control her class schedule. I mean, it was pretty deep.
Yeah. Basically stepping in as parents to a child and saying, you need to meet with us. You need to do this. You need to do that. And, it's like, this is indicative of Fundyland. This is how it works. You always have to be submissive to someone, especially if you're a woman.
Oh, yeah.
So shout out to her, to
our friend that we can't name.
I'm not going to tell her name, but we'll share your stories. Like, this is how you expose it. When you tell your story, when you say, this happened to me, and because people will be like, no, that didn't happen to you. That's not, you're seeing it wrong, or you're crazy, or that's how they keep control over you, is that they make you feel like you're crazy, or you're unsubmissive, or you're wrong in some way, and deny your truth, the truth of what has happened to you. So kudos to her for kind of standing up to that, seeing it, and breaking free of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think the only other thing I think a good thing to wrap up would just be to point out that in fundamentalism, to discipline your children out of foolishness or some sort of sin habit or whatever, you're really teaching your children, if they obey the first time, every time with a happy heart, you'll be pleased with them. And essentially what we're doing is ridding our children in need of the gospel. Because if I can just get my act together and if I can just perform, then I'm okay. And when I don't perform, then, God is disappointed with me. And it's this whole works righteousness thing that we're doing with our kids. And that's, abuse is dangerous. And all of this, I'm sure, would be a psychologist's wet dream to hear about these stories.
Yeah, I know, right?
But also, I mean, it's an affront to the gospel. And I think that has to be pointed out, that whether our kids ever are compliant at home, it's not a spiritual issue. And, kids raised in crack houses where no one's mentioned them hear about Christ.
Yeah.
And have faith in Christ, And so I don't know, it's just this weird idea that if we, I even, my husband and I had a strange comment made to us in fundamentalism that they wish they could do a field study on our oldest, because we raised her. We were doing such an excellent job with her. It'd be so great to do some sort of field study on her as an adult and see how our faithfulness panned out into her becoming this great Christian person. And it's like, wow, you've really seriously missed the mark. Like, we can teach our children to love others, to be respectful in society, to give a shit beyond their noses. And I think that's good, and I think that's necessary. But as far as, can I make my child have faith by disciplining them? No. And actually what I can do is drive that child far from ever wanting anything to do with Jesus ever.
Yeah.
And that's what's terrifying about this whole thing. And that's why, yes, we're speaking against abuse, but we're also speaking against physical abuse, but spiritual abuse.
Yeah.
And what is not the gospel.
Right. Basically raising little Pharisees.
Yeah.
Ooh. Seems like that's the chapter chapter 1 in my book.
Oh,
Raising little Pharisees.
It is. Shameless plug.
Yep. Get the book.
Get the book. I'm blanking on the name of the book. Little Saviors.
Yep. Have more Cheetos.
Have more Tito's. My glass is like, I got one more sip left. We'll get to the last drop.
Yeah. So this ridiculous abuse and control, it's like control that we think we have from childhood, high school, college. I remember even being in college group at Grace Community, and both Arnie and I were told when we were dating that we needed to stop spending so much time with each other because we were neglecting our ministries. And it's like, and it's like these people who are like 3 years older than us who are telling us this. So it's like, you're Paul and you're Timothy, and it's really not a discipleship thing as much as it's a parenting thing. So, we don't have control. We don't even have control over ourselves. So we can all set ourselves free by not trying to control our fellow man. And when it comes to our kids, yes, there's guidance. Yes, there's discipline. Yes, to a certain extent, you have to put them under the law.
Right.
You have to understand consequences.
Yes. Absolutely.
But you're not going to have ultimate control. You're not a despot over your child's life. So, well, we're in a severe thunderstorm over here.
I don't know. See that. Your lights are like flickering.
Yeah, flickering, and there's thunder and all that kind of stuff. So I guess we'll wrap this up and put it out there. Feel free to contact us. Tell us your stories.
Yes.
Tell us your stories.
Yes. You can see us on Twitter at @seas_red, or you can email us at fundylandseasred@gmail.com.
And eventually we will get that email.
I checked our email from like 8 months ago and I was like, oh, we have emails. Whoops. I'm really bad about this. I will try. If you don't tweet us and say I emailed you, check your email.
Yeah.
That would be helpful. Yeah. And hopefully soon we'll have a Facebook page. I'm going to work on that this week. I need to get that going. So that'll be fun. So we can interact more with our viewers.
Yeah. We'll try to do better. We'll try harder.
Mm-hmm. We'll try harder. Or not.
Yes. All right. Best way to get a hold of us is to tweet to us.
Yeah.
And we love our listeners. Check out our new logo.
It's super cute. More cartoons, running away, driving away, burning out, or peeling out of Fundyland.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, listeners. We love you guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Bye.